Azure SQL, Q&A. Question: how frequently does Azure Advisor update its recommendations for Azure SQL? Answer: Azure Advisor recommendations are generally updated every 24 hours. Question: can you schedule automated health checks for Azure SQL? Answer: while Azure doesn't offer native scheduling for health checks, you can utilize Azure Automation to schedule SQL queries that test the database health. Question: can you set up Azure SQL diagnostics to send logs to multiple destinations? Answer: yes, you can route logs to multiple destinations like Azure Monitor Logs, Azure Storage, and Event Hubs. Question: is real-time log streaming supported in Azure SQL Managed Instance? Answer: no, real-time log streaming is not supported for Azure SQL Managed Instance. Question: can you use Azure Policy to enforce configurations on Azure SQL databases? Answer: yes, Azure Policy can be used to enforce specific configurations and settings on Azure SQL databases. Question: does Azure SQL support migration from Oracle databases? Answer: yes, Azure Database Migration Service supports migration from Oracle to Azure SQL. Question: what is dynamic data masking in Azure SQL? Answer: dynamic data masking, DDM, in Azure SQL automatically obscures sensitive data in query results, reducing exposure without altering the actual data in the database. Question: is transparent data encryption enabled by default in Azure SQL? Answer: yes, TD is enabled by default on new Azure SQL databases to encrypt data at rest. Question: what are the key types supported by Always Encrypted in Azure SQL? Answer: Always Encrypted in Azure SQL supports two key types, column encryption keys, KEKs, and column master keys, CMKs. Question: which versions of TLS are supported by Azure SQL? Answer: Azure SQL supports TLS 1.2 for secure connections. Question: what are the performance implications of reaching the maximum size limit in Azure SQL database? Answer: reaching the maximum size limit would prevent new data insertion and could degrade performance, necessitating a move to a higher service tier or manual data deletion. Question: is it possible to rename an Azure SQL database? Answer: yes, you can rename an Azure SQL database via Transact SQL, but there are certain limitations and considerations to keep in mind. Question: what is a delete lock in Azure SQL? Answer: a delete lock prevents the accidental deletion of the Azure SQL resource but allows both read and write operations. Question: how are alerts in Azure SQL categorized? Answer: alerts in Azure SQL are categorized by their severity levels and can be based on metrics or activity logs. Question: what's the difference between basic and premium monitoring tiers in Azure SQL? Answer: the basic tier provides a limited set of metrics with a 7-day retention period, while the premium tier offers an extended set of metrics with a longer retention. Question: can you set up automated alerts based on Azure SQL logs? Answer: yes, automated alerts can be configured in Azure Monitor based on specific log queries against Azure SQL logs. Question: what is the performance category in Azure Advisor recommendations for Azure SQL? Answer: the performance category in Azure Advisor for Azure SQL provides suggestions on optimizing query execution, indexing, and other performance-related configurations. Question: what kind of metrics are generally considered in an Azure SQL health check? Answer: in an Azure SQL health check, metrics like CPU utilization, data I/O, log I/O, and DTU consumption are commonly considered. Question: can you export Azure SQL diagnostics to third-party services? Answer: yes. Azure SQL diagnostics can be exported to third-party XEAM systems like Splunk using Azure Event Hubs. Question: is it possible to filter the log stream in Azure SQL? Answer: While Azure SQL itself doesn't offer real-time log streaming, you can filter logs in Azure Monitor to focus on specific events or metrics. Question: how does scaling up affect the availability of an Azure SQL database? Answer: scaling up an Azure SQL database may result in a brief downtime as resources are reallocated. Question: does Azure SQL Managed Instance support auto-scaling? Answer: auto-scaling is not natively supported for Azure SQL Managed Instance. Question: how many Azure AD identities can be provisioned for an Azure SQL database? Answer: you can provision up to 100 Azure AD identities for a single Azure SQL database. Question: can Azure SQL firewall rules be applied at both the server and database levels? Answer: yes. Firewall rules can be configured at both the server level and the individual database level. Question: what is cell-level encryption in Azure SQL? Answer: cell-level encryption allows for the encryption of specific data columns, rather than the entire database, offering a more granular level of security. Question: what is the role of query store in Azure SQL performance optimization? Answer: query store captures query performance data, making it easier to identify inefficient queries and improve overall database performance. Question: what is the role of zone redundant configuration in Azure SQL? Answer: zone redundant configuration enhances availability by spreading replicas across multiple availability zones within a region. Question: can you deploy an Azure SQL database using Azure DevOps? Answer: yes. Azure SQL database can be deployed as part of C/CD pipelines in Azure DevOps. Question: can you manage multiple Azure SQL databases using Azure SQL Server Management Studio (SSMS)? Answer: yes. Azure SQL Server Management Studio allows you to manage multiple Azure SQL databases from a single interface. Question: what is the Azure Database Migration Service (DMS)? Answer: Azure DMS is a fully managed service designed to enable seamless migrations from multiple database sources to Azure data platforms with minimal downtime. Question: can you change the collation settings of an Azure SQL database after it has been created? Answer: no. The collation settings for an Azure SQL database cannot be changed after the database has been created. Question: can you override a resource lock in Azure SQL? Answer: only users with the owner or user access administrator roles can delete or modify a resource lock. Question: can you set up alerts based on query performance in Azure SQL? Answer: yes. Alerts can be set up based on specific query performance metrics using Azure Monitor. Question: can Azure SQL metrics be integrated with Grafana? Answer: yes. Azure SQL metrics can be integrated with Grafana using the Azure Monitor data source. Question: can you set a retention policy for Azure SQL logs? Answer: yes. You can set a retention policy for Azure SQL logs within Azure Monitor. Question: does Azure Advisor provide cost-saving recommendations for Azure SQL? Answer: yes. Azure Advisor offers a cost category that provides recommendations for optimizing Azure SQL costs. Question: what is the Database Health Monitor feature in Azure SQL Server Management Studio (SSMS)? Answer: the Database Health Monitor in SSMS is a tool that provides real-time statistics and analytics to evaluate the health of your Azure SQL database. Question: can you configure Azure SQL diagnostic settings to send data to multiple sinks like Azure Blob Storage and Event Hubs simultaneously? Answer: yes. Diagnostic settings can be configured to send telemetry data to multiple destinations like Azure Blob Storage, Event Hubs, and Azure Monitor logs. Question: how can log stream be used for real-time troubleshooting in Azure SQL? Answer: log stream can be accessed through Azure Monitor, providing real-time log data for quick diagnostics and troubleshooting. Question: Is it possible to automate scaling up and down of Azure SQL database? Answer: You can use Azure Automation to automate the scaling operations based on specific triggers or schedules. Question: What is the role of elastic pools in scaling out Azure SQL databases? Answer: Elastic pools allow multiple Azure SQL databases to share resources, optimizing costs and resource utilization when scaling out. Question: What types of Azure AD authentication methods can be used with Azure SQL? Answer: Azure SQL supports multiple Azure AD authentication methods, including password-based, integrated Windows authentication, and multi-factor authentication. Question: Can you set up geofiltering in Azure SQL firewall rules? Answer: Geofiltering is not natively supported in Azure SQL, but you can manually configure IP rules to mimic geofiltering. Question: Is it possible to use third-party encryption tools with Azure SQL? Answer: Azure SQL is generally designed to work with its own security features, but you can implement third-party encryption at the application level. Question: What is Azure SQL's automatic tuning? Answer: Automatic tuning is a feature that continuously monitors query performance and automatically adjusts settings to optimize the performance of Azure SQL database. Question: How does Azure SQL ensure data durability? Answer: Azure SQL uses a combination of local and geo-redundant backups, ensuring data durability and availability even in the event of regional failures. Thanks for watching.